Have you ever wondered why men, in their deepest desires, are both irresistibly drawn to the mysterious woman who embodies shadow and yet terrified of her very presence? In her they sense a power that is not tame, not softened by societal approval, but forged in silence, fire, and hidden truths. She is the dark feminine, the reflection of everything a man's ego wishes to conquer, but also everything his unconscious secretly craves to surrender to. Jung spoke of the anima, the hidden feminine within the male psyche, shaping his longing, molding his attraction, and haunting him with projections of what he has not yet faced within himself. When a woman dares to embody her shadow, unafraid of her intensity, unapologetic in her sensuality, unashamed of her anger or wildness, she awakens in him both the ache of desire and the trembling of fear. Because she is not merely a woman, she is a mirror. She reflects back to him the unclaimed parts of his soul. His hunger meets his terror. His craving meets his resistance. You have likely felt this paradox in the way a man looks at you. His eyes linger too long, but his words stumble. He praises your beauty, then withdraws when you reveal your depth. He touches, then retreats as if he has brushed against fire. This is not confusion. It is archetypal confrontation. The dark feminine is not an object to be possessed. She is a force that dismantles illusions. To stand before her is to face the truth of one's own shadow, and most men are not ready, yet they cannot turn away, for what terrifies them is also what liberates them. Like Odysseus lured by the sirens, they want the song even as they fear it will undo them. The Stoic philosophers warned of passions that enslave the mind, but what they did not erase is that within passion lies transformation. Seneca wrote of mastering desire, yet he too acknowledged that the soul is tested by the fires it resists. So when a man resists a woman's dark radiance, he is not fleeing her, he is fleeing himself. But what about you? Do you shrink your power to soothe his comfort? Do you dim your flame because his eyes cannot handle its blaze? This is where most women fall into the oldest trap of all, becoming palatable. They cut away their chaos, silence their storms, sweeten their words, hoping to be chosen by men who could never meet their true depth. Yet the shadow feminine does not beg to be chosen. She chooses herself first, and from that wholeness, she selects who may enter her world. This is the paradox. Men crave the woman who frightens them because she carries the medicine their unconscious seeks. She is not here to mother his wounds, nor to soften her truth into digestible pieces. She is here as catalyst, to unravel his illusions, to tempt him toward growth, to remind him that love without fear is not love at all, but mere convenience. The man who encounters the dark feminine feels the ground shift beneath him, as though something ancient has been stirred from its slumber. She is not the smiling goddess of comfort who strokes his ego, nor the angel who embodies purity without flaw. She is Persephone descending into the underworld, Lilith whispering from the margins, Kali dancing in the ashes of what must be destroyed. To stand before her is to feel the pulse of death and rebirth in a single breath. Men are conditioned to seek control over themselves, over women, over the unpredictable forces of life. The dark feminine strips away that illusion. She does not submit to the fragile scaffolding of his certainty. She dismantles it, not with cruelty, but with truth. His fear is not of her body, her words, or even her independence. His fear is of what awakens in himself when he surrenders to her presence. For in her he confronts his anima, the suppressed emotions, the neglected tenderness, the secret cravings for intensity. he has banished to the unconscious. Carl Jung warned that what we repress does not vanish. It returns, often projected onto others. Thus, the man projects his shadow onto her. He labels her dangerous, manipulative, too much. Yet beneath those judgments lies fascination. For the qualities he condemns are often the very ones his soul longs to embrace. Her unapologetic rage reflects his buried anger. Her sensual magnetism mirrors his stifled desire. Her spiritual depth exposes his neglected longing for meaning. She is his mirror, and mirrors are not always kind. You have felt this mirror in action when a man both idolizes and demonizes you. One moment you are his muse, the embodiment of everything he has ever wanted. The next, you are a threat. Too complex, too demanding, too uncontrollable. This push and pull is not about you. It is the war inside him. He cannot yet hold the paradox of wanting what terrifies him. He wants softness without surrender, passion without vulnerability, devotion without confrontation. But the dark feminine refuses to divide herself. She is whole, and wholeness cannot be negotiated. For the woman who dares to stand in her shadow power, there is always the temptation to dilute herself, to make herself easier to consume. But shadow work is not about consumption. It is about liberation. By embracing her own depths, she is no longer enslaved to the male gaze. She becomes the storm that clears away illusions, the silence that unnerves the shallow, the presence that demands authenticity. She is not cruel, but she is unyielding, and this unyielding presence draws men in precisely because it promises something their soul craves, the end of pretense. Consider this. The man does not fear being destroyed by you. He fears being reborn through you. For rebirth means ego death, the shattering of the old masks, the collapse of false strength. And in that death, he senses both agony and freedom. The dark feminine offers not comfort, but transformation. And transformation is never gentle. It is fire consuming what no longer serves. When a man encounters the woman who embodies her shadow, he feels the weight of centuries pressing into his chest. For generations, society has painted her as the danger, the seductress, the temptress leading men astray. Eve blamed for the fall, Lilith cast into exile, Medea condemned as mad. The narrative has always been the same. Silence the woman who cannot be controlled, for she threatens the fragile order upon which male dominance has been built. Yet beneath the fear lies truth. She is not the cause of his undoing, but the revealer of what was already broken within him. The dark feminine does not beg for safety within his arms. She carries her own. She does not wither under judgment. She thrives in the shadows where others dare not look. Her allure is not in sweetness, but in the fullness of her being, rage and tenderness, chaos and stillness, fire and water, life and death. To embrace her is to embrace the totality of existence, the sacred marriage of opposites. Jung called this process individuation, the integration of shadow and light, the reconciliation of the fragmented self into wholeness. Most men live divided. They wear masks of strength, hiding wounds they dare not reveal. They build walls of logic, fearing the flood of their own emotions. And then they meet her, the woman who refuses to be divided, who walks with both her demons and her angels. Suddenly, his illusions collapse. He sees that what he has hidden, she has already embraced. Her fearlessness in facing her shadow exposes his cowardice in facing his own. And this confrontation unsettles him more than any rejection could. You have seen it, the way his gaze lingers, not just on your body, but on the essence he cannot name. He senses that you will not play by the rules. He feels that you will not soothe him with lies. He knows instinctively that with you there is no pretending, and so he both resists and hungers. You represent the freedom he desires and the truth he fears. To be with you means to face himself, and many men would rather run from such a mirror. Yet paradoxically, it is this very fear that ignites their craving. The Stoics taught that what we resist most often holds the seed of our growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the obstacle becomes the way. So too in attraction. The dark feminine is the obstacle that becomes the path. A man may resist her intensity, but if he surrenders, she will lead him not into destruction, but into expansion. She is not chaos without purpose. She is the storm that clears the air. She is not cruelty for its own sake. She is the truth that liberates from illusion. But understand this, she does not exist to heal him. That is his work, not hers. She is not a savior, nor a sanctuary from his own avoidance. She is a catalyst, and catalysts do not stay to ensure the reaction completes. They ignite, they awaken, they move on, and in her wake, the man is left with a choice: retreat into denial, or step into his own shadow and claim the wholeness she reflected to him. What unsettles men most about the dark feminine is not that she is untamed, but that she cannot be possessed. Possession is the oldest desire of the insecure masculine: to bind, to claim, to hold something as proof of power. But the woman who has faced her shadow does not belong. She flows where she chooses, loves where she wills, withdraws without apology. Her love is a gift, never a guarantee. Her presence is sacred, never permanent. And this terrifies him because it reveals a truth he would rather ignore: that all things are transient, that no love can be owned, and that the only control he has is over his own response. Jung observed that the unconscious resists what it needs most. Thus, the man resists her freedom because it mirrors his imprisonment. He has bound himself in roles: provider, protector, conqueror, leader. Yet these roles, revered by society, are also cages. She threatens the stability of those cages by simply existing beyond them. When he reaches for her, he does not touch compliance, but wildness. When he demands certainty, she answers with mystery. When he seeks dominance, he finds reflection. And what he sees is not her subjugation, but his own vulnerability. This is why the encounter with the dark feminine often feels like both seduction and initiation. It is not mere attraction, it is a rite of passage. To step toward her is to walk toward his own shadow, to confront the parts of himself that he has denied. His fear is not of her rejection, but of what he will discover about himself if he surrenders. Desire becomes a test. Will he cling to his illusions, or will he allow himself to be undone? And you, as the woman who holds this archetypal power, must recognize this truth. His reaction does not define you. His fear is not your burden. His retreat is not your failure. Too many women mistake a man's inability to face their depth as evidence that they are too much. But you are not too much. He is simply unready. A mirror is not diminished when someone refuses to look into it. Your task is not to soften the reflection, but to hold it steady, even when it frightens him. In her presence, the man is forced to choose. He can demonize her, casting her as the dangerous seductress to protect his fragile sense of control. Or he can revere her, placing her on a pedestal so high that she becomes untouchable, safe in fantasy but never engaged in reality. Both are defenses. Both are projections. Only when he strips away these illusions can he meet her as she truly is. Not an idol, not a threat, but a woman, whole, complex, powerful, and free. You know this dance. You have seen the longing in his eyes, followed by the excuses on his lips. You have felt his desire, then watched him vanish into silence. Understand that this is not rejection. It is initiation. Every man who meets the dark feminine must decide. Will he step into the fire of his own becoming, or will he flee back into the comfort of half-life? The essence of the dark feminine is paradox, and paradox is what the ego cannot bear. She is the nurturer and the destroyer, the lover and the liberator, the silence and the storm. She embodies what Jung described as the union of opposites, a wholeness that transcends the limited categories the mind seeks to impose. Men fear her because she dissolves the rigid boundaries of their control. They crave her because only through her do they glimpse the possibility of their own transcendence. This is why history has tried to tame her. Myths and scriptures are filled with warnings against the woman who refuses to be contained. Pandora, blamed for releasing chaos into the world. Circe, accused of witchcraft for her refusal to submit. Mary Magdalene, shamed and silenced until her truth was almost erased. Yet every attempt to bury her only proves her endurance. She survives in whispers, in stories, in the secret admiration men cannot confess aloud. What men call danger is often simply the presence of a truth they are not prepared to honor. When you step into your own shadow power, you embody this ancient lineage. You carry the weight of centuries of silenced voices, and you turn that weight into a crown. You are no longer defined by the role of caretaker, maiden, or muse. You are the woman who holds her darkness with the same grace as her light, and this balance, this wholeness, radiates as irresistible magnetism. For nothing is more alluring than authenticity unshaken by fear. The man who meets you may feel as though he stands at the edge of a cliff. One step forward means surrender, a leap into the unknown where his ego cannot follow. One step back means safety, but also stagnation. His soul longs to leap, but his conditioning urges retreat. This inner war is not about you, yet you are the battlefield upon which it is fought. The greater your wholeness, the sharper his choice becomes. And here lies the danger for women who embody this power, to confuse a man's hesitation with a mandate to wait, to nurture, to dim their flame until he is ready. But readiness is not your responsibility. You are not here to shepherd him across the threshold. You are the threshold itself. His choice to cross or retreat is his alone. If he flees, let him. If he projects, let him. If he returns, he must do so not as a conqueror, but as an equal. The Stoics would remind us that attachment to outcomes is the root of suffering. Epictetus taught that freedom comes not from controlling others, but from mastering oneself. And so it is with the dark feminine. Her liberation lies in her refusal to chain herself to another's fear. She does not withhold her truth for acceptance, nor diminish her power for belonging. She walks her path unbent, and by doing so, she becomes the very fire that burns away illusion. For the man who dares, she is the doorway into his own transformation. For the man who resists, she is the haunting reminder of what he refuses to face. Either way, she is unforgettable. To love the dark feminine is to wrestle with one's own mortality, for she carries within her the scent of endings as much as beginnings. She is the reminder that nothing lasts, that passion fades, that bodies age, that illusions shatter. Her presence strips away the lies of permanence, and men, taught to build empires, to leave legacies, to control the flow of time, feel their power tremble in her gaze. She does not promise immortality through conquest. She whispers of impermanence through intimacy. And strangely, this is what makes her irresistible. For in surrendering to her, a man feels alive in a way no empire could ever grant. Jung wrote that the shadow is not merely darkness, but also vitality. What we repress becomes the reservoir of our unlived life, and the dark feminine, embodying her shadow, carries this vitality like a storm in her blood. She is laughter that refuses to be polite, tears that refuse to be hidden, desire that refuses to be tamed. She embodies everything he has denied in himself, his softness, his grief, his longing to be consumed by something greater than his control. To touch her is to taste the life he has denied himself. You can feel this in the way he both clings and recoils. He clings because you awaken in him a thirst he has buried beneath stoicism and duty. He recoils because he senses that once he drinks, he will never be the same. You are not safe in the way he has been taught to expect safety from women. Agreeable, nurturing, endlessly accommodating. Instead, you are safe in the way a forest is safe. Wild, unpredictable, sacred, filled with both danger and wonder. To step into you is to step into nature itself, and nature does not yield control. And here is the secret many women forget. The dark feminine is not cruel. Her fire burns, but it does not destroy without reason. Her storms rage, but they cleanse as much as they strike. She does not seek to break men for the sake of power. She seeks to reveal what is already broken. Her role is not vengeance, but truth. And truth, when met with resistance, feels like violence. But when embraced, it feels like liberation. Consider the words of Marcus Aurelius. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The dark feminine is that impediment, the resistance men feel before their own awakening. She is the obstacle that reveals the path. And though many curse her for the chaos she stirs, it is often through her that they glimpse their own possibility for rebirth. You, too, must learn this detachment. Do not confuse your role as mirror with the role of savior. You are not here to hold his hand through the underworld. You are not here to soften the blow of his confrontation. You are here to embody truth so fully that he must choose to face himself or to turn away. His fear is not your failure. His denial is not your burden. You remain whole, whether he meets you there or not. There comes a moment when the man, standing before the dark feminine, realizes that his desire is not for her body alone, but for the freedom she represents. He longs not merely to touch her skin, but to taste the sovereignty she carries. The unyielding refusal to beg, to shrink, to compromise her essence for approval. What unsettles him most is that she is complete without him. She does not orbit around his validation, nor does her identity hinge upon his recognition. She is whole unto herself, and that wholeness reveals to him how fragmented he truly is. Jung observed that the anima serves as a guide to the inner world, pulling the man toward integration. Yet integration requires surrender. To love the dark feminine is to let the false self die, the self that pretends strength while denying pain, the self that seeks conquest while fearing intimacy, the self that hides behind armor because it cannot bear to be seen bare. With her, armor is useless. She sees through masks not because she studies them, but because she has burned her own. She recognizes in him the very defenses she once carried, and she does not mistake them for truth. You know this recognition. You feel it when his charm falters under your silence, when his bravado dissolves under your gaze. He senses that you cannot be deceived by surface, and so he either flees or trembles with longing. What he calls danger is not your darkness, but the threat of exposure. You awaken in him the possibility of being fully seen, in his flaws, in his wounds, in the raw humanity he has hidden. And to be seen is both what he craves most and what he fears most. The dark feminine is not a role one plays, but a state of being earned through shadow works. It is born in the nights when you face your loneliness without distraction, when you sit with your grief until it teaches you, when you reclaim your sensuality without shame, when you embrace your anger without apology. Each confrontation with your shadow is an initiation, and with every step you become more magnetic, not because you perform allure, but because you embody authenticity. Men feel this instinctively. They may not understand it, but they cannot ignore it. The Stoics would say that true power lies in self-mastery. The woman who embodies the dark feminine masters not by suppression, but by integration. She does not deny her desires, she channels them. She does not repress her pain, she transforms it. She does not fear her endings, she births from them. In her, opposites live side by side, unthreatened by contradiction. And this terrifies men, for they have been taught that control is strength, while she reveals that surrender is power. Here lies the ultimate paradox of attraction. He both fears losing himself in her and knows that in losing himself, he will finally find himself. This is why she lingers in his memory long after she has gone. He may forget her words, her touch, even her face, but he will never forget the way she made him feel, exposed, alive, undone, and reborn in the same breath. The dark feminine is not a storm without a center. She is the eye of the storm itself, stillness wrapped in chaos, silence cloaked in thunder. Men sense this when they are near her. They feel her calm, but also the weight of what surrounds it. She does not chase. She does not cling. She does not beg for attention. Her power lies in her presence, in the unshakable truth that she exists fully as she is. And that presence draws men in like moths to flame, even as they fear the burn. What men crave is not her compliance, but her mystery. Mystery is the lifeblood of attraction. A woman who reveals everything at once is consumed too quickly, her depth mistaken for surface. But the dark feminine cannot be consumed, for her depth has no bottom. She embodies the endless unknown, a reminder that life itself is not something to be solved, but something to be surrendered to. And men who often live as if life is a puzzle to conquer find themselves both disarmed and enthralled by this truth. But here is where the tragedy often unfolds. Many men seek to possess what cannot be possessed. They want her wildness packaged into predictability, her depth diluted into something manageable. They want her to be both muse and mother, lover and servant, goddess and girl. And when she refuses to fracture herself into these roles, they label her difficult, unattainable, even dangerous. Yet it is not she who is dangerous. It is their inability to meet her as whole. You, as the woman who embodies this power, must resist the urge to soften for the sake of their comfort. Every time you dilute your truth to be chosen, you betray yourself. Every time you bite your tongue to avoid being too much, you surrender your crown. The dark feminine does not bow for belonging. She belongs by existing, and from that wholeness, she chooses. Jung spoke of individuation as the process of becoming one's true self, and in many ways, the dark feminine embodies this path more fiercely than any other archetype. She is not content with fragments. She does not hide her wounds in shame. She wears them as proof of her becoming. Her darkness does not diminish her beauty, it deepens it. Her chaos does not weaken her, it makes her unbreakable. In her contradictions lies her power. Men fear her because she threatens the death of the ego. But what they fail to see is that this death is not destruction, but liberation. To surrender to her presence is to experience a truth few ever touch, that real intimacy is not found in control, but in surrender. And this is why they crave her, even as they resist. She is the gateway to the love they secretly yearn for, the kind that demands the whole self, not just the curated mask. For the woman, the choice is clear. Do you dim your light to be palatable, or do you stand in the fullness of your shadow, knowing that only the brave will stay? The answer defines not only your relationships, but the path of your own becoming. The true danger of the dark feminine is not that she destroys men, but that she dismantles illusions, illusions of control, illusions of dominance, illusions of who he believes he is. She does not attack the man himself. She unravels the falsehoods he has woven around his soul. And when those illusions fall, he is left naked, not in body, but in spirit. This is the moment of terror, but also the moment of possibility. For only when stripped bare can he begin to see himself clearly. Men are taught to equate vulnerability with a weakness, yet in her presence, vulnerability becomes unavoidable. She does not mock it, nor does she coddle it. She simply demands it. And this demand is not spoken in words, but in the silent intensity of her gaze, in the way she refuses to accept half-truths, in the way her presence makes pretense impossible. A man may try to charm her, to dominate her, to manipulate her, but every tactic falls flat, for she does not play games rooted in insecurity. She requires truth, and truth alone. And here lies the reason why she is both feared and desired. Truth is terrifying. Truth requires the death of the false self, and that death feels like annihilation. But once crossed, it becomes liberation. This is why men remember her long after she has left. It is not just her beauty they recall, but the way she made them feel alive by forcing them into honesty. For the woman, this is not a role but a reality. You do not become the dark feminine by performance, but by initiation. Every heartbreak you endure, every rejection you face, every shadow you embrace adds to your depth. You are forged in fire, and fire does not apologize for its heat. You carry scars, but those scars glow like constellations, marking you as someone who has walked through darkness and returned with treasure. This treasure is not for everyone. It is for those who dare to meet you where you are, whole, raw, unbroken in your brokenness. The Stoics taught detachment from external validation, reminding us that freedom lies in not needing what is outside our control. The dark feminine embodies this truth. She does not cling to approval, nor does she beg for permanence. She loves without possession, gives without depletion, and withdraws without guilt. In this detachment lies her sovereignty. She cannot be caged, not because she refuses love, but because her love is too expansive to be owned. Men often mistake this sovereignty for coldness. They call her aloof, untouchable, perhaps even heartless. Yet beneath her independence lies immense capacity for love, but love on her terms, love rooted in truth, love that does not compromise her essence. This is the love men secretly crave, though many are too afraid to receive it. It is love that does not flatter the ego, but nourishes the soul. And so she remains a paradox, feared for her intensity, craved for her authenticity. She is the flame that men circle endlessly, some daring to step into the fire, others content to watch from the shadows. But whether they leap or retreat, she remains unchanged. For her power does not come from who desires her, but from the unshakable truth of who she is. The man who surrenders to the dark feminine discovers that his fear was never of her, but of himself. For what she awakens is not alien, but forgotten. The tenderness he buried under armor, the longing he disguised as ambition, the grief he numbed with distractions. She is not the source of his pain. She is the mirror of it. And in that reflection, he sees the truth he has long avoided, that he has been living half a life. Jung taught that the shadow, when integrated, becomes the gold of the soul, and the dark feminine carries that gold openly. She has walked through her own underworld, faced her own demons, and returned not diminished but radiant. This is why her presence is magnetic. She no longer fears what lurks in the depths, for she has learned to make the depths her home. When men sense this, they are drawn not only to her body, but to the promise of wholeness she embodies. She does not just ignite desire, she awakens the possibility of transformation. But transformation is not gentle. To step into her orbit is to step into fire. It means letting go of the masks, the lies, the half-truths that society has encouraged him to wear. And many men, when faced with this, recoil. They call her too much, too intense, too dangerous. Yet what they mean is, I am not yet ready to meet myself. You, as the woman who walks in this power, must understand this clearly. His retreat is not your rejection. His fear is not your flaw. His avoidance is not a reflection of your worth. Too many women carry the wounds of men who could not face them. But a man's inability to meet your depth does not mean your depth is wrong. It means he has chosen safety over growth, illusion over truth. And that is his path, not yours. The Stoics would remind you, do not chain your peace to what lies outside your control. You cannot force a man to rise into his own wholeness. You cannot coax him into courage. You can only embody your truth and let his choice reveal his readiness. True sovereignty is found not in bending for love, but in standing so firmly in yourself that love must meet you there or fall away. And here is the liberation. When you no longer fear being too much, you become untouchable. No insult can wound you, no rejection can diminish you, no silence can steal your power. For you are not waiting to be chosen, you are choosing. And from that place, desire shifts. You are no longer the seeker of validation, but the embodiment of value. The man who dares to meet you will find not a tame partner, but a mirror. Not a servant, but an equal. Not a fantasy, but a force. And in that encounter, he will either ascend into his own transformation or retreat into the comfort of his illusions. Either way, you remain whole. There is a sacred irony in the way men respond to the dark feminine. They call her dangerous, yet they cannot stay away. They claim she unsettles them, yet they return to her memory again and again. They tell themselves she is too much, yet no other woman lingers in their thoughts with such haunting persistence. Why? Because she embodies what their soul longs for, but their ego resists. The collapse of falsehood. In her, they feel life raw, unfiltered, and uncompromising. She does not smile to ease tension. She lets silence speak. She does not play small to comfort fragile pride. She stands in her power, even if it burns. She does not beg for love. She radiates it from her very being. And this radiance reveals the truth, that real intimacy cannot exist without risk, without surrender, without standing naked in one's humanity. Jung once said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The dark feminine is that darkness made conscious. She carries it not as a burden, but as an offering. She shows that beauty is not perfection, but authenticity. She shows that strength is not control, but vulnerability mastered. She shows that love is not ownership, but presence. And for a man conditioned to fear his own shadow, she is both his greatest terror and his deepest desire. You have seen this in his eyes, the hunger that flickers when you speak your truth without apology, the tension in his body when you do not yield to his attempts to define you, the reverence when he realizes you will not betray yourself for his comfort. In that moment, he understands something that both frightens and frees him. You do not need him. You may want him. You may choose him. But your wholeness does not depend on him. And that truth unsettles everything he has been taught about power, love, and belonging. For centuries, women have been told to diminish themselves for the sake of love. Be softer, be quieter, be easier, be less. The dark feminine answers with defiance. I will not be less so you can feel more. She refuses to trade her fire for security, her truth for acceptance, her wildness for approval. She is the living embodiment of Seneca's wisdom. He who is brave is free. Her bravery lies in her refusal to be edited, and her freedom lies in the power that this refusal creates. And so, she becomes unforgettable. A man may leave her, but he will never escape her. She awakens something in him that cannot be put back to sleep. Even in his absence, her presence lingers like a song that replays in the quiet hours of the night. For she is not just a woman to him, she is initiation, a doorway, a revelation of what love could be if he were willing to stand in the fire. To stand in the presence of the dark feminine is to confront eternity compressed into a single moment. She is not simply a lover, not merely a partner. She is threshold and mirror, storm and sanctuary. Men sense this instinctively. They know that to step fully into her orbit is to step beyond the shallow waters of half-lived existence into the depths where masks dissolve and illusions drown. It is not her body that terrifies them most, but her gaze, the way it pierces past their bravado, their charm, their carefully constructed selves, and touches the naked truth beneath. A man may desire her touch, but he fears her seeing. For when she sees, there is no escape. She does not just see who he pretends to be, she sees who he really is. His wounds, his fears, his shame, his hunger, his yearning for love too vast to admit. And in that moment he is stripped of control. He stands no longer as conqueror, but as child, vulnerable, open, unmasked. Some run from this revelation, unable to bear it. Others are shattered by it, only to return stronger, reborn. You, as the woman who embodies this archetype, carry immense responsibility. Your power is not in what you demand, but in what you refuse to abandon, your truth. The world will tell you to soften, to hide your intensity, to disguise your wisdom so men will not fear you. But to betray your essence for belonging is to betray the very medicine you carry. The dark feminine heals not by pleasing, but by existing without apology. She teaches through presence, not persuasion. The Stoics understood this paradox of power well. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but your estimate of it. So it is with you. A man's fear of your depth is not your burden. His retreat is not your flaw. His judgment is not your truth. What you embody is neutral power, and how he responds reveals him, not you. And yet, the paradox continues. The very men who fear you most often desire you most, because deep within them lies the hunger for wholeness, for the reclamation of their suppressed anima, for the integration of their shadow. And you embody the very thing they lack. Their craving is not only for your touch, but for the missing piece of themselves that you mirror. You awaken their longing to feel again, to live again, to surrender again. But here is the truth that sets you free. You are not here to complete him. You are not the missing piece. You are the reminder that the piece was always within him. You do not hand him his soul. You awaken him to the fact that he already carries it. Whether he claims it or denies it is his choice, not your responsibility. Thus, you remain untamed, desired yet free, feared yet irresistible. Not because you manipulate, but because you embody. Not because you chase, but because you choose. And in your choosing lies the secret that terrifies and enthralls men alike. You are not waiting for permission to exist. You already do. In the end, the dark feminine is not about men at all, though they orbit her, though they are shaped by their encounters with her. Her essence is not defined in relation to them. She is defined by her own becoming. She is the woman who has descended into her own underworld, faced the serpents of shame, the shadows of rejection, the ghosts of abandonment, and returned carrying her own crown. She does not wear it for display, nor to assert dominance, but because she has earned it through fire. Her allure is not crafted through performance. It radiates because she is whole. And wholeness is magnetic. In a world where so many people wear masks, the one who dares to live unmasked becomes unforgettable. Men call this danger because it unsettles their illusions, but what they truly sense is liberation, liberation from the smallness of half-lived lives. And yet liberation is not easy. To walk in her presence is to feel the ground shake beneath the foundations of ego. She does not demand submission, but she invites surrender. Surrender to truth, surrender to depth, surrender to the parts of oneself long exiled into silence. This surrender is the very thing men fear most, and also the very thing they crave most. It is why they call her witch, temptress, siren, not because she curses them, but because she awakens what they cannot control. But here lies her freedom. She does not need to be understood. She does not need to be validated. She does not need to be chosen. She has chosen herself already. Her love, when given, is a gift, not a negotiation. Her presence, when shared, is sacred, not a bargain. And in this sovereignty, she embodies what Seneca called the highest power, mastery over the self, detachment from the chains of external approval. For you, walking this path, the final truth is this: you are not too much. You were never too much. You were only ever too much for those unwilling to meet themselves. Your depth does not diminish your worth. It magnifies it. Your shadow is not a flaw. It is the source of your radiance. The men who cannot face it are not your loss. They are simply not your match. And so the story resolves not in longing, not in fear, but in freedom. For the woman who embodies her shadow has nothing left to prove. She does not chase. She does not beg. She does not bargain. She chooses. And in that choice, she becomes both the fire and the calm, both the mirror and the crown, both the storm and the sanctuary.